Well, for more on China's battle against the latest wave of COVID cases, let's bring in Zoon Ahmed Khan, a visiting fellow at Tsinghua University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about China's mitigation strategy. How has it fared so far in terms of health outcomes as well as economic outcomes?
Okay, so I think the first thing to understand is that when we look at how China is dealing with the current outbreak, it's that the fact that they have a prevention strategy, a strategy that because of which the virus hasn't exactly spread, that they're even able to conduct contact tracing. So far, I think obviously this is a very worrying outbreak. It is the most severe outbreak in some ways. We've seen that passengers in airlines, for example, have dropped more than ever since this past year and a half. And obviously these numbers are worrying. But that said, yesterday, Nanjing reported 0 cases. And the communities that have been isolated, waves of testing, like your reporter just mentioned, the 5th wave of testing in Yangzhou was conducted. And every time they're able to eliminate, isolate the virus in a more effective way. So I would say that so far, majority of the people understand that the local communities, which they call the neighborhood committees, they are able to tackle, they are able to identify the sources, and they're able to identify how to minimize the further spread. So this is the basic update. And in terms of how other people are reacting, for example, in Beijing, I think the SOPs have been stepped up a bit. Every time I'm entering a building, I have to write down my name, number, everything, and which floor, which office I'm going to. This is something that's consistently being experienced. Another thing is that airlines have said people need to test, either get a COVID test done or they need to be vaccinated before they travel. And apart from that, we also see that generally people are trying, no big events are being held. Many have been postponed. Many have been switched to online. So these basic changes are being felt. And that said, I feel people still have confidence that this wave can be tackled.
Right.
More people are getting the vaccine now. I think some young people, because honestly, with the zero COVID strategy, getting a vaccine didn't really affect their mobility so much. It didn't necessarily improve their mobility so much. No, but now increasingly young people are getting vaccinated.
You touched on something interesting there, because obviously with this more virulent Delta variant, has this changed, or will it change then the zero case strategy?
You know, the thing is, the alternative, we can't even fathom what the alternative of a zero COVID strategy in a country of 1.5 billion people could look like. And quite frankly, no vaccine currently, obviously no vaccine has 100% effectiveness. And given that the virus itself is evolving, it's becoming stronger, we see that the current vaccines are becoming increasingly less effective. So I don't think there seems to be any call from people or generally the authorities to shift or drastically change the current strategy. But that said, people are obviously worried. People do talk about how long will this continue, and this realization that unless collectively, globally, the issue has been tackled, we will be affected. Even if China has relative free flow of people and movement within its borders, it doesn't mean that we are safe. And this case is something that people always know it can happen as long as we have cases in the world. Even though so many SOPs are being followed, people are quarantining for 3 to 4 weeks, whether they're Chinese or foreigners. When they enter China, between cities, sometimes people are quarantining. They're quarantining in their homes at times. But that said, the alternative could be appalling. So we know that there needs to be much more effort globally to be able to completely allow mobility. I think that's the basic pulse.
And as we're seeing, we're stuck again with this balancing act, because a lot of people are asking, how much will this weigh on the Chinese economy to potentially have more lockdowns and shutdowns again if the numbers continue to surge?
Well, I think in numbers, obviously, China has been impacted like all other countries. Most countries have faced severe economic consequences of this. But that said, we obviously cannot predict. So I'll give you an example. In Beijing, in China in general, we can't predict to what extent our mobility will be hampered 3-4 months later, depending on how the domestic virus looks. So I think in terms of Chinese economy as well, these lockdowns do affect, but how much would the effect be if such policies are not pursued? This is something that can't be predicted. So I think this is definitely something that's being studied, and we're still trying to understand to what extent, till when will these particular lockdowns or quarantines be pursued? Even currently, we don't know. So for example, I'll just give you an example. I have an event later this month in another province, and we still don't know whether we'll conduct it online, postpone it. So it's still unpredictable. They can't ascertain what exactly the mobility will look like, what will be the policy until we've reached a certain amount of success in the current strategy.
Certainly is a fast-moving situation. We thank you for your time. Zoon Ahmed Khan there, visiting fellow at Tsinghua University.